Welcome to the respiratory system. Here we're going to have a look at how your body takes in gases and gets rid of waste gases. Sit back, take a deep breath, and enjoy this journey inside our bodies. Here we see the basic parts involved with the respiratory system. We're going to go through them in a little more detail in a moment. I'd like to point out that one major part is missing. The heart, which is usually here, is not in this diagram. As we saw before, the heart is a very important part of our body's interior systems. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. First, we need to be able to get air into our bodies. Air comes in through our mouth and nose when we inhale. If we were a salamander, we could just absorb it through our skins, but we're not. So we need to breathe that gas in. When the air comes in through our mouth or nose, it needs to get to our lungs somehow. That happens by having that air go down our trachea. Our trachea is a pipe that connects our nose and mouth to our lungs. You have two pipes that run down the back of your throat. One is for air, the trachea. The other one, the esophagus, is for food. We'll look at it in a later lesson. Right now, your trachea, the pipe that's involved with moving gas from your mouth and nose into your lungs. The lungs are the organs where the gas is collected. In here, air is absorbed in, and the oxygen comes out and into our bloodstream. On the opposite end, carbon dioxide is then released back into the gas, which is air without the oxygen, and we breathe it out. We exhale it. The bronchus are the pipes that go into our lungs. What happens is, as the air moves into our lungs, it goes through a set of narrower and narrower pipes. Eventually it gets to the point where there's little sacs at the end called alveoli. They're at the end of the bronchus, and we're going to look at those in a moment. But at this stage, blood and the gas sacs touch. This is how we get the oxygen and carbon dioxide to switch. The last part we're going to look at is the diaphragm. It's a large muscle that sits right underneath the lungs. When it contracts and releases, this allows us to breathe. If you're a singer, you need to be in great control of your diaphragm. This is what lets you hit the high notes. More commonly, we don't like our diaphragm because when it starts to spasm and twitch, it causes hiccups. Next time you have the hiccups, just look at your belly and say, "Silly diaphragm." So we've talked about taking in air. This is the chemical composition of air. You'll notice that most of it is nitrogen. Nitrogen really doesn't affect us. It just really helps hold things up. What we're really interested in is the oxygen. You'll see it's about 21% of the air we take in. So we're going to breathe that in, and we need to get that gas, that oxygen, out. And then we're going to release some more carbon dioxide. You'll see that there's also carbon dioxide in the air we breathe in, but a very, very small amount, less than 1%. We're going to have a closer look at how the gases move in and out of the blood, and in this case the alveoli, which are the small air sacs in the lungs. So if you were to come down your trachea splits into your bronchus, and eventually those tubes get really, really tiny, and at the very end are small sacs called the alveoli. This is where the air collects. You'll see here that we have blood running right by those alveoli. It's a very thin membrane between the two. What happens is the blood that's coming in is really high in CO2. That carbon dioxide is then put into the alveoli. When it does that, it pushes oxygen into the bloodstream. Blood cells are happy to pick up the oxygen and then move it around the body. So what happens? Blood from your body comes into your heart. It's high in carbon dioxide. That blood is pumped out to your lungs. In the lungs, the carbon dioxide comes out, oxygen comes in. That blood goes back to your heart and pumps again. So this is how our circulatory system and our respiratory system work together. This is what normal human lung tissue looks like. It is pretty pink because of the blood flow to it, but you notice that there are some black bits around. Over time, our lungs will filter out dirt, dust, and other toxins that we breathe in when we don't even know it. In an adult, it's not uncommon to find small black bits in a lung. If you were to look at a baby's lung, they'd be perfectly pink. This is a smoker's lung. Some people choose to still smoke. When you inhale cigarette smoke, you're inhaling a whole cocktail of various chemicals. When those chemicals come into your body, they need to get filtered. They get filtered out in the lungs. Over time, things like tar build up in those lungs, as well as the other chemicals that you will find in cigarettes. With time, eventually, those chemicals will cause things called cancers in our lungs. Cancers are cells that grow out of control. They form big lumps called tumors. In this case, you can see that there's a large amount of black material in the lung. That is the tar from cigarettes. Even though they're filtered, a lot of material gets through. Cigarette smoking will not kill you within a week. Within 20-25 years, sorry, you're up the creek. One last bit before you go. I'm going to talk quickly about bronchitis. Some of you will get this annually. What it is an infection in your bronchioles, right here. And what happens is a virus, or in this case bacteria, gets in, and it causes your bronchioles to swell. When it does that, it causes these tubes to get narrower. It makes it harder to get air into your lungs, and you end up coughing a whole lot. It can be treated with antibiotics, and usually you're feeling better within 10 days. Asthma is something slightly different. Asthma is a swelling and a closing of your air pipe and into your lungs, into your bronchioles. Okay, this sometimes can be caused by things like viruses and bacteria, but oftentimes asthma sufferers, it's due to exercise. And what happens is it's just a naturally occurring closing of those lungs. So you take a puffer. What a puffer does is it gives you some steroids, and it causes this area of your lungs to open up. Usually within 2 or 3 puffs, you'll be back to normal. If not, you may have to go visit your doctor. Hope you've enjoyed our trip through the respiratory system. I found it a breath of fresh air.